my little rule of thumb is that when you're forced to end up with an isolated pawn on d4, it's time to move the bishop. The reason why I chose the, let's call it regular, traditional London instead of the Jobava London is mainly because I saw this bishop was not going to be developed. So I think the London is pretty nice when this bishop stays home. I've been playing a lot of e4, so I'll start with d4, and we'll see what he plays and then decide what we're gonna do. Let me know. d5. All right, nice and simple. d4, d5 to start off. All right, it's kind of hard to get a Catalan working from this particular move order. Still possible, but I'll play bishop f4. A simple London. It was the first suggestion. And what is the London all about? Pretty much starting with these moves and then immediately playing e3. This is what the London is all about right here, these three moves. Me personally, when I see bishop d6, I like to let people take because then I get good control over e5. One move that's possible after bishop d6 is queen g4, which you might recognize from sort of like a Vienna, right? Where both sides develop their bishops and white plays queen g4. Very similar vibe here. Because the knight has not developed to cover g4, if you start with the bishop, queen g4 is definitely a move. But it's also like definitely a rule-breaking kind of move, and how many people hang their queen to a tactic like that? It's like, it's not really what I would recommend. So, yeah, let's start with something that makes a little bit more sense. I'm gonna go knight d2. The knight never goes to c3. He takes, we're gonna take back. The knight always goes to, you know, pretty much d2 and f3 are the moves. Curious what he does here. I don't really like playing bishop g3. I find a lot of the time that it's kind of a wasted move. Playing bishop back, I like to just leave it there. He spent 2 moves taking, and my pawn gets to f4, which I actually really like. So I'll play c3, connect these guys here together. This is the ideal pawn structure, and actually we're kind of approaching the ideal London here because he's played knight c6, so he's not going to have c5. I know that doesn't look like a big deal, but no c5 means no open c-file. No queen b6, no pressure on d4, no opportunity to expand with c4. It actually takes a lot of options away from black. So now I play bishop d3. We're covering the e4 square, treating this very similar to a stone wall, actually. Our knight wants to visit the e5 square. And of course, we're still ready to castle this way. If queen d6 to hit the pawn, then either knight e5 or g3 will be perfectly fine. But I have no need to castle queenside because I think I can castle kingside and still make all the moves that I'm interested in. So, you know, stonewall, this pawn would basically be on e3. So you can see how this is just a much better version of a stonewall. It's like I just get an open e-file and I get all the same benefits from the stonewall. So like I said, queen d6, I have options g3 or knight e5. If you ask me, knight e5 makes a bit more sense because it invites him to take, which would certainly not be a very good option. So we'll go ahead and put the knight there. Always taking with the f-pawn, just like the stonewall. But of course, he really shouldn't take. probably we're gonna castle next. So if black is struggling well here, then I think this knight needs to move somewhere, and then the c5 needs to happen, even though it should have happened already. Or maybe this knight moves somewhere in f6, but no matter what, one of his best plans is going to involve losing time, moving the same piece twice, 3 times, just to get an easy position, whereas we've got everything developed. The only reason I moved a piece twice here was because it actually acted as a defense to the f4 pawn. Knight's to the side of the board. Why the heck do they keep saying never to do that? Well, here's one reason right here. There's a queen on d1. Queen takes h5, and what do you know? I'm also threatening checkmate in 1. So I'd say that's a pretty good move right there. That really worked out. Yeah, knight h5, just a big blunder. But why did he play the knight move? I think he played it because he wanted to maybe play f6. So I was suggesting maybe knight d7 and f6. He went knight h5 to try to gain some time, but ill-advised, and now white is just doing fine. Up a piece and coasting. If I take this, I mean, even if I sack everything there, the best I can do is a draw. I mean, this knight takes too long to join the attack, so we're definitely not going to sack, especially because I just won material. So what do I got to prove? Let's go queen h6, defends this pawn, and it's very close to the king, so h4, h5, and takes would be honestly kind of a really easy, unstoppable looking plan. Yeah, I really like h5 here. I would normally castle, play rook e1, you know, easy, easy. But we're up a piece, and I don't see any way that he can stop something like h4, h5. f6, the main difference is when the pawn was on f7 and our queen was on h5 and he played g6, I said we're not sacking because I would have to sack both of my pieces. I would have to sack the knight, the f pawn would take, then the bishop, the h pawn would take, and then the queen gets there. So I'd lose 2 pieces. Here, only the h pawn can recapture, so now I can sacrifice, no problem. Question is always, which thing do we sacrifice with? Like bishop or knight? It's always the case that the bishop is more forcing, because the bishop sacking here will always come with a threat. So bishop takes, takes, king h8. But the problem with sacking your bishop first is that your queen and knight, I mean, they're okay, but they're not really creating any serious threats for the most part. Any checkmating threats. So if you sack the bishop and they take back, knight takes, of course rook there gets mated, but in that actual position, white's not really threatening anything. Queen h8, king there. Still not threatening very much. It's kind of a weird, it's like kind of a weird position to be in, but don't actually think you're threatening that much. Knight takes here. If pawn takes, the game is over immediately. Queen takes and queen h7. So knight takes actually cannot be captured. So knight takes is the easy suggestion. Main thing is after knight takes rook f7, what do? Are we happy enough with that? Because then he is planning to take it. Knight takes g6, rook f7. I need something to do there because all of a sudden then he can take on g6. And I will say, knight takes g6, rook f7, knight h4. I don't know. That seems like a pretty low energy kind of move. Something about that just isn't satisfactory to me. So what am I thinking of now? What am I thinking of now? It's like I want to play knight takes, but I'm not too sure after rook f7 what to do. Knight h4, yeah, that might be the best move, but ugh, is that really the best option for me here? It's a little disappointing. I would just want something a little more direct. Bishop takes, I know for sure though, isn't the right idea. That's just, there's not enough threats there, I think. So, okay, I think we got to play knight takes. I mean, it's a fantastic move. It really is, but that being said, once he plays rook there, I'm like, I just wish there was a crushing move that I could play. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything. I'm not seeing anything. I really want to play h4, rook h3, rook g3, but I mean, how many moves is that? Like, it's just so much. I don't have time for that. So I think that might be it, guys. Knight g6. I mean, not really gonna hate on a free pawn, but I wish there was better after rook f7. Because then pawn takes, taking back isn't really anything. I'm glad we calculated that out. It's a really good thing we calculated that, so to make sure that we knew what we were doing here. I had to be sure that this was mate. It's the weird thing about knight takes g6. Like, I think it's the best move, but I was obviously worried about something that he didn't even maybe didn't even realize he could play it. Okay, GG. Interesting. Well, I think you guys already have an idea. There might be a brilliancy in this game, right? And it's probably going to be knight takes g6. Of course, there's a brilliancy. One of the lowest quality brilliancies we've ever played. So, like I was saying, like, once you take this way, your whole game plan is solidify this with c3. The London bishop I like to leave on f4 when it gets challenged. You know, there's lots of lines here, but specifically after this move is the time that I like to bring it back. So my little rule of thumb is that when you're forced to end up with an isolated pawn on d4, it's time to move the bishop. So for example, right here, if I don't move the bishop, then I'm kind of forced to take an isolated pawn here. And I don't like that. That just looks bad to me. Why was I okay leaving it until now? Well, because here I can play knight takes d4. And I don't have to take a weird pawn there. And same thing here. Alright, that's not going to be an isolated pawn. So it's really once the pawn and knight come out that I consider moving it back. So I left it there. He took. I'm happy enough with that. I like to cover e4 first. Exact same stuff as the stone wall. You guys know in the stone wall, this pawn would be here, but same idea. Cover e4 so he can't use it, and don't worry, e5 will be waiting for you in the middle game. And after this, I do like g3. I decided to throw the knight in. I think both are fantastic moves here. We played knight e5. Knight h5 was clearly a big blunder. Obviously just totally missed. The queen was there. g6. I'm going to throw the queen up to h6. And after queen h6, He goes f6, which kind of just blunders, and I was really unsure which one was best. Like, it was really close for me. Bishop or knight, right? And you can see they're almost like exact same evaluation. So we played knight takes. We're gonna get credit for brilliancy. I'm sure that if bishop takes was played, it would also be brilliant. Bishop takes g6 is good. Wow, did I choose the move that was a brilliancy, even though they're the exact same? It's just good. They're both the exact same strength. They both sack a piece. In fact, bishop takes g6 hangs 2 pieces. But no, knight takes g6 brilliancy. Yeah. Yeah, well, we made the right choice. And look at this. As I said, after rook f7, it pains me, but it's the truth. Knight h4 is the best, and it's just the move. One pawn and get out of there. I mean, it sucks. It's not like flashy, but it's the best line. And the game obviously ended because he took back, and this is just mate in 2. But white's up a piece here, so there's nothing really that needs to be done. Nothing extraordinary that needs to be done. Even just basic moves will obviously yield an advantage. But yeah, we didn't get too deep into London there, but main point was I like to leave the bishop there for the opponent to take, and most of the time they will take it. And there's a reason when we played the stone wall as white that we always said, like, you know, if we get a position like this, then we're super happy with white. And if black plays this, I said we never want to take. Never want to take. This is the worst kind of stonewall that we can play. Truly the worst. So, I played d4. I haven't played a ton of d4. Queen's Gambit, Jobava London. We do have some options here, huh? We do have some options. I played a little bit of the London, but I don't think I've played specifically the Jobava London, so the opportunity presents itself here. We could definitely do that. I'll be honest, I played the London a lot. I don't really play knight c3 very much. It's not the main stuff for me. Even here, my instinct is definitely not to play the Jobava London with knight c3. It could work out, of course, but it feels a little bit worse against this particular setup. Because I mean, yeah, black might just go bishop d6. So I actually don't think I'm gonna play knight c3 here. Doesn't really seem as good as it could be. So let's just play a London with e3. It's just that the move e6 to me, like if black played bishop f5, I'd be very interested in playing this. Because then, as you guys might know, the Jobava London works really well against the bishop on f5. You play g4 and you get these really nice positions. But when I see e6 and I know the bishop's not coming out, I'm much more interested in playing a regular London here, because that bishop is not going to be very strong. So knight d2 and knight f3 are the next couple moves. c3, bishop d3, and definitely when I see this, it's a no-brainer. c3 just quite literally automatic. It's not that I'm scared of this, but I want this structure anyway, so of course c3 is just a huge tempo for me. And if he had just played bishop there anyway, my pawn would be here, right? So this is just obviously an achievement for me. bishop to d6. Again, that doesn't really bother me. So I'm gonna leave the bishop there. I can go knight f3, but bishop d3 just to stop knight e4 is a little bit tempting. So I am gonna do this, stop that, and bishop takes, we're happy to take back. Castles. Now we definitely want the knight to come out to f3. Again, this is completely fine for us. And the reason why I chose the, let's call it regular traditional London instead of the Jobava London is mainly because I saw this bishop was not going to be developed. So I think the London is pretty nice when this bishop stays home. Like has to go to b7, for example. And taking here only gives me control over e5, which is really comfy. Plus he doesn't quite have knight e4 yet, so. Exactly, Crocodile. That's actually 100% the same idea. Using these pieces to stop the knight from going to e4. So knight g4, it's like, if you actually think to yourself what Black is intending by this, what answers do you come up with? Honestly, what do you guys think my opponent is up to here? Like, are they trying to play f5? Are they trying to play e5 and support it in a weird way? Are they trying to like take on f2? What do we think knight g4 is all about? Because it's definitely a very bad move. If I play h3, the best move is to simply return. So it's definitely not a good move, and oftentimes I will see people play moves like this, and I just like, what are we doing, right? After h3, the knight simply has to retreat, and knight h6 is just very bad. So there's a few things. After knight here, I know h3 is in my back pocket as a great move to just force the knight to go back, so that's, if I don't see anything else, I'm gonna play h3. But as soon as I see this, I'm thinking about bishop takes h7, king takes h7, knight g5 check, king, we can only assume g8, queen takes g4, and I want to get my queen out somewhere to threaten mate. Even though there's e5 in that position to hit my queen and my bishop, I think I can go threaten mate somewhere. Now, the annoying thing for me is in this line, takes knight g5, let's say king g8, queen takes g4. I'm wondering what happens if my opponent plays f6. Right, f6. And if my knight has to move, then e5 will hit my queen and it'll also hit my bishop. So like, don't really love that. Looking to shake up this position here as well. But bishop h7, I think we may need to be a little careful. Bishop h7, king takes. If we want to throw this move in, notice how that doesn't actually help us. Now I can't go knight g5 because my bishop's not defending it. So the only way it's going to work is if I go here, then go with the knight, then let's say the king moves. At that point, I'm down a piece. So if I take on d6, black can also take on g5. I have to be quite careful. I'm down a piece in that line. Even though I take here, I'm going to be 2 pieces for a rook. That's not good enough. So the only way this line works is takes, knight g5, king moves, and then queen takes g4. But then I have to make sure I have an answer to f6 and e5. So it's quite the calculation. The first thing is the king goes back to g8, queen takes g4, f6. Then I would have to take on d6, and then I would have to retreat my knight. It's the only safe way to do it, right? The only other way that black could play is maybe king g6 instead of king g8. Crazy enough, right? Queen takes g4, and then e5. Now my queen is being hit, but I have knight e6. Knight e6 is a check. I think it works. Just barely, but I think it works. And it's not the type of thing that, in my opinion, you can play lightly. So I am going to play bishop h7, but a lot of these calculations are just barely working. Just barely. And the thing is that it's like, I'm so scared sometimes to make a move like this when everything's barely working, because if it doesn't, I'm gonna hate myself because I had such an obvious basic move h3 available. So I'm gonna go here. King h6 is no good for many reasons, but yeah, just obviously not a move. King h8 takes, and then you're literally getting mated, so not a move either. The only two considerations are king g8 and king g6. Of course, this one makes sense. We have to even the score a little bit with queen takes knight. If bishop takes here, yes, black could take back, but that would benefit me because then e5 hitting my queen doesn't even hit my bishop anymore. But the problem with this, as I said, is I think queen takes g5, and then if I take the rook, you'll see black has 3 pieces, I have 1, so it'll be 2 pieces plus, yeah, 2 pieces for a rook and a pawn, which I don't really like for the rook and pawn. So I think we have to take here. And this was the moment where I was saying it was a little bit scary, because if f6 and I play knight takes e6, there's queen e7. It defends checkmate, and my knight is actually pinned to my own queen. So f6 knight e6 is very bad for me. f6, if my knight retreats, then e5 is very bad for me. Hits my queen and hits the bishop. So it's quite tough. So after f6, my move has to be bishop takes here and then retreat the knight so that I don't get hit with e5. Not the most obvious. So you just have to make sure those calculations work. My opponent played e5, which is a double attack, but the reason why I wasn't extremely scared of this is because I know my queen has at least these 2 squares to choose from, which will threaten checkmate. So it's not in time to play pawn takes bishop. Now, I do have to be careful. One of these is going to be better than the other. Also, once I do this, it's not completely over, because bishop f5 will be a great move to stop it. So I'm trying to figure out which of those 2 moves I like. Instinctively, queen h5 doesn't feel correct because the bishop then goes to g6 with tempo. So I'm looking at queen h4, bishop f5 forced, has to be the move. Then pawn takes pawn, bishop e7, and you know, what do I do from there, basically? I don't think we need to calculate much more than that. We'll just be up a couple pawns, and that should be good enough. If we go like this and then take, then I thought, oh, you know, bishop g6 gets thrown in, and I'm not actually sure if that benefits me or not. So that's what I'm kind of wrestling with right now. For some reason, it feels better to have my queen on this square so that later I can go back to that square. So that's really my feeling. I'm gonna play queen h4 for that reason. So I can come back here. If I'm on h5, I don't really like that. I don't like that I can't support this knight from g3. Because being on the h file here is a little bit awkward. I want to be able to play queen g3 so I'm not in like a pin. And also, once there's a bishop on f5, guess what? I'm not mating on h7. So then I start to think, why the hell is my queen even here? I want to move it to another good square. And from h5, I don't like f3 or e2, and I really like g3. Then we can make some new threats. So, and oof, my opponent does not see bishop f5. Does not see it, which is quite beneficial. Queen h4 was just a temporary move. It was, yes, going to threaten this, but the point was to bring it back to g3. So, yeah, here it doesn't make any sense to take with the queen and lose a bishop. Although after this, f6 will win the bishop anyway, I'd rather make him earn it. So we're definitely going to take like that. So he is going to win this bishop. Now, what's the best way that I can lose this piece? That's literally what I'm thinking right now. Is it taking? Is it letting him take? Is it going here? Is it going here? Right? Which way, like, benefits me the most? Because there is pawn takes here. At which point, if the pawn took back, I'm safe. If the bishop takes back, I'm safe, actually, because g5, I have this. But after this, it's going to be pawn takes on g5. So I do have to be ready for that. Yeah, bishop h6, tempting, but, you know, after bishop h6, pawn takes, queen takes, rook f7. I don't know, black still has the full center. I'm not that convinced, but I feel like I'd rather ruin the center. So I quite like this right now. And then just take back. So that's what I'm currently looking at. If the bishop has to move, I think it gets really good for me. But black has rook f5. I think it's okay. Queen d8, rook back to f8 is why that is a little bit annoying to me. But I still think that's the way to do it. So I'm gonna take here. Yeah, I have to lose a piece here no matter what, so it's just about how I want to do it. Also, after pawn takes, I could go queen d4 and then maybe take on d5. So I think I had a lot of good options there. He takes back, which is obviously a blunder. Doesn't take the piece attacking the queen. Now we can save our bishop. And I say save because g5, I can go queen g3 and pin the g pawn. So we truly do save our piece right now. And now what's the material? It's just a queen for a bishop. So white is way ahead, and don't think there's really anything to be concerned about anymore. So I think I'll just go here. Again, I'm not seeing any reason to be bothered by g5 because I always have queen g3. And yeah, I might be interested in taking. Okay, takes here. Let's grab it with the queen. Knight c5 makes a serious threat, but I'll be able to stop it by castling and bringing a rook to the d file. Queen takes c7 is also on tap here. And it is queen for bishop, so it's a serious material advantage right now. Good move, good move. At this point, castling kingside is safe, but I would also say that, you know, in terms of what I'm gonna do in this position, plan-wise, it's probably gonna be maybe running the h-pawn, so this might not be the best move, but I definitely like castling. I need to castle, so I knew I was gonna go one way or the other. But I'll go this way. He doesn't have a queen, so it's like I'm not getting mated. And as a general rule, like if you have some sort of imbalance and your opponent has no queen, you know, you're probably not going to get mated. So long castling, if not for the potential to get attacked or other problems, would almost always be a nice choice because it brings the rook right into the center. But for many other reasons, like king safety, we don't play this move. But if my opponent doesn't have a queen, I'm not really bothered. So I think we want to bring this knight. Moving the knight out of the way because what the heck was it doing on f3, right? It was dominated on both of those squares. Not much to do. So we brought it into the center where maybe we'll go knight f5, also cover e6. And after that bishop move, queen d6 now hits both pieces. Knight e4, we don't have to care about stuff like knight f2 because like what? I'm losing an exchange, but I'm also winning a bishop and I'm up so much material that stuff doesn't really matter. b6 is the only move to kind of stay in the game, but then I would hit him with b4 and he would have to move the piece. So queen d6 was winning a piece no matter what. So he'll get one of my rooks, but then we can see the resulting material will be queen and knight for a rook, which is very worth for me. So, couple things. If I check him here, he does have to go there. Queen or king h7 would lose immediately. Knight e6, he has rook f7, which actually keeps him very well in the game, so I don't think I want to do that. Knight f5 makes the same mate threat, and again, he has rook f7. But I tell you, one of the reasons why I like the idea knight f5, rook f7, is that after I move my queen to e6, all of a sudden, I'm threatening stuff like knight d6. So, I think knight f5 is a great way to start. For that reason, rook here, we move our queen. He's in a pin, and the only way to get out of the pin is to move the king this way, which I think is moving the king kind of towards death. Yeah, so let's move the queen now. Knight d6, big threat. So again, you can grab one of my rooks, but knight d6 is coming as the very next move. And here we actually have a checkmate, but I sort of need to force him to allow me to do it. So knight e7, king h7, queen h3 is mate. But I can't play queen h3. So I just need to move a rook so that his knight will take one of my rooks, and then I can deliver the mate. So if I do this one, maybe he'd throw in a check or something random. So let's use this rook. He'll take my rook, and then we can deliver this checkmate. He can't take the knight because it's pinned, and no matter which king move he does, queen h3 will be mate. So it'd be hard to see this not working out, and we can grab this anytime, but obviously we set this up so that knight e7 would force a king move, and queen h3 is a nice pattern to know where the knight takes away the escape squares. That knight was covering that square earlier, so not good enough. And this will be mate, no matter what. It's a cute checkmate pattern. I don't mind throwing in a cheeky kick KO for that. Just a cheeky one. Okay, so yeah, like I said, guys, I would have gone knight c3, but I just think e6 is so inviting for a regular London. So I took my opportunity there. And this is, I think it's a really nice feeling, an empowering feeling when you feel comfortable enough in the opening to see what your opponent's doing and then decide yourself how to handle it, rather than always be doing the exact same thing. So I'm definitely fortunate that I was able to make that decision. Knight g4, not great, not great. And so the interesting thing about this is that if you look at, and this is exactly what I was getting at earlier, if you look at this position, bishop h7 is not, it's not on here, right? There's a lot of good moves that can be played here. It's not really one of them. Bishop h7. It's a, you know, it's a fine move. It's not bad, and you can see here that I'm going to be maintaining an edge. Like white's better. But I knew for a fact that this would not be a serious edge. And the line that black should be playing is the one that we looked at. F6. And I was saying knight takes e6 basically is worse after this. So bishop takes here. Black will take with the pawn. Yes, we retreat our knight. We're happy we won a pawn, but black has achieved something as well. E5, this pawn structure is great against the knight. This knight can't move. Bishop is going to be super strong on the light squares, so this position is not crushing. It's good, but it's not crushing. So I don't know if bishop h7 is the right move. It feels like a great move, and I sort of stand by it, but note that there are a lot of tremendous moves here. H3, I was talking about, this is also a very good move. You can see the eval is pretty much +1. The knight has to go back, and now I've got a free c3 move, a free h3 move. I'm enjoying myself here. So this move felt like a good move, bishop h7, but I knew it wasn't crushing. He played e5, which is not the best, and like I was saying, it's so hard for me to decide between these two moves. They feel almost identical, but ultimately I went with queen h4 because I liked the move queen g3 after. But very, very, very hard to choose. He needs to play bishop to f5, and he didn't. That would have been a big move to find, but now I think this is just fairly easy. This is incredible. Bishop h6 is best. Bishop h6 is best. Can you imagine? So what's the situation here? Someone want to enlighten me? No, but at this point, guys, you guys were saying bishop h6. Remember? Because I said, how should we lose our bishop here? And you guys said bishop h6. But at this point, we're not losing the bishop. So can someone tell me why we opt to lose it? Someone tell me why the best move is losing the bishop when we can choose not to lose the bishop? Huh? What's going on here? This is ridiculous. Bishop h6. And just takes? It's crazy. What? I mean, that's wild. I don't buy that for a second. Oh, yeah, you guys had this idea? McNaster, you saw this one? Real T-Money, you were calculating this line, were you? Mattis, was this in your list of candidate moves for the position? What the hell am I supposed to do with this? This is ridiculous. You saw it and didn't want to ruin it for me. Well, Dr. Lord, this is what I'm saying. I played bishop here. And of course, the engine is not going to say g5 because, as we saw, I mean, not only do I have queen g3, but, you know, I could sack. There are many good things here. g5 is not it. The engine is telling me knight c6 and white's position with a queen for a bishop here, because I can take this, is worse than white's position with a queen for two bishops here. What? The math isn't mathing. I do not understand. I'll tell you that right now. All right. Well, nevertheless, we played bishop f4. Blunder, I guess. Knight d7, knight f3, and I think at this point it was pretty much over. Bishop d7 was, I think, the last the last mistake. Knight f5, and now queen e6 is decisive. Rook f8 is pretty much a move that loses the game immediately. And notice the difference between rook df1 and rook hf1. Big difference. They're both going to win the game, obviously, but not allowing knight d3, I think is relevant. So rook hf1, it's nice. And it's a nice mating pattern.